Howdy. This here old show may contain some cussing, some discussions of a non-biblical nature, and if that sort of thing does not sound like something you'd be interested in listening to, then I would suggest you turn around right now, fella, and just head out the other way. Saloon's down the street. They got some nice girls there.
They must be destroyed on sight.
All right, we're back, and we are starting our Spaghetti Western series, which should be a lot of fun. Is They Must Be Destroyed on Sight, a movie podcast. I'm your host, Lee. God forgives. I don't, Russell. And I'm joined by my co-host, Daniel, Killer Adios Harper. How are you doing, sir?
I just got done dragging a coffin through the mud, and boy, are my arms tired.
Was it just full of gold, or was it just full of a machine gun, or both?
It was full of hopes for a better future. I don't know. I had no further jokes. So
I'm going to try to work in a really bad spaghetti western title for for our introductions for every episode in this.
No problem. It sounds like a plan.
So you know, but yeah, we're gonna start off our spaghetti western series that we're gonna be running all month here in September, and we're gonna be starting out with Django. We're gonna be talking about Django. We're gonna probably talk a little bit about the sequel, a little bit about Quentin Tarantino's homage to it, and we'll mention some of the many sequels that have been made, and just plain old rip-offs that have been made. Hopefully, you'll find this fairly informative. We're not going to sit here and pretend that this is going to be any sort of grand scholarly look at spaghetti westerns as a whole, as a genre. We're just pretty kind of do our usual thing where we just sort of watch movies and say what we think about them. So it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I think we've both been really excited to do spaghetti westerns since the beginning, and I can't wait personally.
Yeah. And hey, look who just jumped in. Paul just jumped in.
Hi. How are we doing?
We're doing good. So I can actually use your introduction name. Paul Savage Gringo Romali has just joined in.
Hi. Nico. How are we doing? Want to kill some Spanish people today? Let's do this.
So we actually got the whole gang back together. It's been a long fucking time since we've had everyone recording together.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the whole gang back together. We're here. We're doing it. My house is a disaster. It's awesome.
Right on.
I'm doing some massive construction with hammers and drills.
That's
but
good.
Not right now.
Yeah. So we got some comments to go through. We'll try to breeze through them here really quick, and then we'll get to the review. A couple comments from CB Fall for our Johnny Mnemonic and Starship Troopers podcast. He said, very cool podcast. I totally agree. Johnny Mnemonic is not one of Keanu Reeves' best movies in any way. Starship Troopers, for me, the plot is cool, the dialogue less so. And then he says, in regards to Daniel's latest intermission episode, excellent intermission episode.
Awesome. Well, maybe he's actually listening.
Yeah,
Who knows?
I hope he is.
Completely disagree.
Yeah. Yeah, I disagree as well. It was terrible.
Does Greg still make the tit references, or does he not do that anymore?
Greg doesn't comment anymore because he actually has a job and a life, so he doesn't listen
what a failure.
Yeah, I know. It's terrible when you see people actually succeed in life and get to do things and they don't have time for shitty podcasts anymore.
Well, suffice to say that none of us are ever going to run into that problem.
No, I don't think so.
And I'm thankful for that, god damn it.
Yeah, god damn it. Our friend Mike Murphy from Badasses, Boobs, and Body Counts podcast says, in relation again to our Starship Troopers and Johnny Mnemonic, I did almost said Jumanji.
Mnemonic, I like
Johnny,
it.
I almost said
Jumanji. Yeah, no, that's a mashup I'd like to see.
Yeah.
Dude, I've only got 320 gigabytes of data in my head, and then when it starts to bleed out, there are going to be like magic rhinos all over the place.
He says, great episode, guys. Couple things. Lee Russell should have put up more of an argument with Daniel Harper in regards to Starship Troopers. And just, by the way, I'm using the full names here because I just cut and paste right from Facebook, so, it's the link thing where it uses your full fucking name. I should have realized that before I got into this, but whatever. Anyway, apparently I should have argued with you in regards to Starship Troopers more. He says it is, after all, a big-budget popcorn film that should never be taken seriously. Also, though you lightly touched down on the action and set pieces, that's what this movie is all about. It's not about a love story. It's about a homage to 50s sci-fi films and all the gory set pieces, not to mention the amazing special effects in regards to the bugs. This one needs to be watched without any preconceptions of what it could have been. Lastly, the performances are pretty bad, and I honestly think that's an homage to older sci-fi films as well. And yes, Dina Meyer is the best performer in the film, and Casper Van Dien should have had a bigger career on his looks alone, though he really can't act. I'm ending this with this. Man, there's a lot of good-looking people in this film, and then he provided a picture of Adolf Hitler with a six-pack of abs.
Hey, mine are liking it. I like that. I like the fact that if I was an actor in just the right film, the fact that I couldn't act would be called a homage to something. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And now also, I think Kit Power chimed in there saying that if he had his chance, he would have disagreed with both me and Daniel. He would have fought us on this film because it's one of his favorite ones. So, yeah.
Well, I'm sure we'll get to have that conversation with Kit one of these days. All I'll say is, the filmmakers explicitly say they were trying to make this allegory and satire, and to read it that way is not. I mean, yeah, okay, if you treat it as a big dumb action movie, it's still not that good because the action just doesn't quite work because there's nothing ever at stake in any of the sequences. So, yeah, it was supposed to be really dumb. Yeah, that's the whole idea. Okay, if you like this movie, I don't have a complaint about it, but it doesn't work for me. So. Yeah.
Well, I like the co-ed showers.
Yeah, I think we all approve of the co-ed showers.
Pretty much, as far as what I remember of that film, that was the only good part in it. So I don't. Whatever.
I think we kind of agreed on that as well for the most part.
They're not the only good thing, but certainly the most memorable.
Yeah, definitely.
There you go. There you go. That's a nice way to say it. See, he's a nice guy.
I think he might have a point with the performances. That might have been part of it, but I mean also the fact that Denise Richards and Casper Van Dien are just kind of garbage actors in the first place. Also kind of.
Well, I get what Casper Van Dien is going for. He's going for this kind of like straight-laced meathead, lunkhead kind of character.
Yeah.
And so I get that, I get that to a certain degree the performances are pitched in that direction to be kind of overly broad and overly, slightly wooden to go with that, but. I mean, it just kind of, I don't know. I mean, it works on that level, but it still doesn't, it's one note. Like, that's the whole thing. Like, I get what you're going for. Do I need 2.5 hours of this or 2 hours and 10 minutes of this?
Yeah.
And the answer is no.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Mike Murphy had a follow-up comment here. Well, not a follow-up to this, but he had another comment on the page. He said, I keep meaning to do this in answer to your question of what director, actor, etc., you would take to an island. And by the way, I've got a name for this game now that we play every once in a while when we have someone new on the podcast. It's basically, there can be only one filmography. That's the name of the game. And he says Clint Eastwood, his full body of work. And yeah, that's a good choice, I think.
Any desert island pick that doesn't include the film Pink Cadillac, it's incomplete, I think.
Yeah. And then, of course, this spawned some response comments from two of our compadres in podcasting. James Murphy said Charlton Heston would be his pick because you get Planet of the Apes, which is maybe his favorite film. He gets Wayne's World, Omega Man, and he says, and an Orson Welles picture too, Touch of Evil. So,
You liked Omega Man?
Omega Man, yeah, he likes Omega Man.
I was more of a fan of Last Man on Earth, more so than Omega Man, but it was all right. It was good.
Yeah, I think you and I both share the same opinion there, Paul. Where our heart goes to Vincent Price in black and white fighting zombies, but
and the winner is
Vincent Price. But and walking around Rome, that's supposed to double as fucking the streets of America, and this doesn't work at all. But somehow it still does.
Mm.
But
Rome is very much like, and nowhere around America.
Yeah,
But, whatever.
But Charlton Heston's a good pick. I mean, that covers a fucking vast fucking swath of films. So
yes, and very good films too.
Yeah, I mean, whether you like Charlton Heston personally or whatever, I kind of consider him one of the greatest actors ever, and he really
he was really good in Rush Hour 2.
Was he in that?
Was that a different guy? I can't remember.
I know he had like basically bit parts in some like 90s action films and stuff as his career was winding down. I'm trying to remember specifically what they were, but it's not coming to me. Usually I just remember him for his like little handful of sci-fi films that he did.
I mean, wasn't he in, no, if he wasn't, please, sorry, but didn't he do Ben-Hur?
Yeah.
Yes, because that was, Ben-Hur, and then, I mean, obviously, Planet of the Apes is one of my favorite films ever, so that was a big one for me.
Yeah.
Any career that spans, Planet of the Apes, Ben-Hur, Soylent Green, and Touch of Evil, that's not a bad choice. That's sure, I can go with that.
Yeah. And Jack Graham chimed in and he says he'd probably be picking Peter Cushing for his pick because he says you get some Dracula, you get loads of Frankenstein, some Sherlock Holmes, and some Doctor Who and a bit of Star Wars and loads of other stuff.
Star Wars,
yeah. And he actually followed up. We were having a little conversation there where he says that his character in StarArs is actually one of his favorite movie villains of all time, basically.
Of course it is. It's Jack Graham. He's a great choice. I agree.
What was the question?
Well, I'm about to pose this to you, Paul, because you are returning to the podcast. This is the first time we've had you back with both of us. Yeah, we have this new game, and it's There Can Be Only One Filmography.
There can be only one filmography.
And basically what it is a desert island question, except you have to pick one actor for the rest of your life, he or she. It's the only filmography that you can watch for the rest of your life on the desert island. And I sort of posited early on that I knew what your answer was going to be, and I think I do know. So I'm waiting for you to answer this one because I think I really do know who it's going to be.
Tracy Lords.
No.
I'm not going to jerk off to fucking Vincent Price. I'm just saying, like, okay, we need to facilitate a few things,
No.
If I wasn't basing my whole experience, sexual experience too off it, I would probably say I'm stuck between two people, and fuck.
So you got to consider it's their whole filmography. So think like if it's a male actor who is in a lot of movies with sexy women, that can still fulfill your jerk off island fantasies for the rest of your life. So
yeah, not really picking out too many sexy broads. Well,
if you don't get this, if you don't give the correct answer, by the way, I know it's all subjective, but I'm saying right now there is only one objective answer from you for this question, and if you don't get it right, I'm going to chastise you on the podcast.
Okay. Now there's two in my brain right now. There's literally two, and believe me, the plethora of these, now there's three. Shit, this is a hard one, and I don't like you now. I'm not happy about that. Because the problem is, the one guy I just remembered has 1 billion films. And are you talking about actors or directors?
They can be both, as long as they've acted at some point.
I'm going strictly actor here. No more director bullshit because you're just confusing me and I want to go cry. Okay. But I'm going strictly on the actor side of things. And I just, for some reason, I flashed into one that I don't want to ever miss. But the simple fact is, he did 100 films, but 98 were shit, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
God, I'd have to kill one of my favorite movies in the world. Actually, oh my God, you're killing me. I would say, okay, we don't have time to talk about this all freaking day. I would go, to save some little shred of what I love, I would go Vincent Price. I'm going to go Vincent Price because at least I can watch Last Man on the Earth, which will make me remember Night of the Living Dead, which will make me remember this, which will make me remember that. I'm going to go with Vincent Price. I was going to go with Christopher Lee at first because he's an amazing actor. He has an amazing plethora of films. I mean, it's just amazing. I thought John Carradine for just a little bit because I wanted to save The Howling, but The Howling had to die.
Paul, I am so
I
fucking...
silver bullet and I blew his fucking brains out.
Paul, I'm so fucking disappointed in you.
I know.
Right now. Because all the choices you just gave were all wrong.
Well, the problem is, you kind of put me under pressure. I just woke up and I have a sinus infection. So
Paul Naschy, dude.
No. I did think Paul Naschy. I did think Paul. It was the first one that popped in my head was Paul Naschy. But I can't watch his films all the time. I love his films, for God's sakes. But if I watched his films for a week, I'd pretty much not turn the TV on for another year. And I've literally done that, where I've watched nothing but his films for a month. And I was like, you know what? Okay. That TV's not going to... And there was like a pile of dust on the TV by the time I turned it on again. So it's not Paul Naschy. I did think about it at the beginning. Well, the thing is, with Vincent Price, John Carradine, and Christopher Lee, you have such a breadth of films to choose from that you will never be bored.
Okay, well, your answer is... Technically, your answers are correct and they're the good ones, but still very disappointing. Because
that's okay. My mom told me this a long time ago, and it really helped me get through life. Paul, no matter whether you win or lose, you'll always be a loser to me. And it really helped.
I don't know. Your answers technically are correct, but at the same time they're wrong, because it just feels wrong. You should be picking Paul Naschy.
It makes it more special that way, because you know why you're crying yourself to sleep that night. You know, I've had those moments. It's good to
Yeah. Well, all right. We'll move on now. We can move right on, unless anyone has anything they want to mention, like anything they've watched in the last little while.
I tried to make that as quickly as possible, but that was a very, very hard question.
It was fun at any rate, so yeah. And I've been waiting a while to ask you, so...
yeah, you poured salt on me and watched me wiggle like the slug I am, so...
That's what this podcast is all about, putting people on the spot. But yeah, if anyone has anything they've watched in the last little while they want to mention, otherwise we can move right on.
I did watch Demons 1 and 2, and later you'll figure that out.
Yeah, same with me. Everything I've watched in the last while has been for bonus content for October for the podcast.
Oh, you ruined it. See, you ruined it. Oh.
Yes, so all you little kiddies have to wait until then.
If I can figure out where it is, I'll show you this quick. And this is something that I hope we can touch on for the podcast, and this is why I'm showing it to you.
Okay, so just so for the people listening at home, he walked off camera. He didn't just stand up and pull his pants down. So
no, I have my My Little Pony boxers on, so we're good.
Okay.
I got the German press book that opens up for Midnight, John Russo's Midnight. It's a German press book from 1982. I think this one's actually dated 82. Nice. But there's the Midnight press book for John Russo, and I have the actual full-scale. I don't think this is an original print, obviously. This is probably a reprint, but it is the big other Midnight poster for the movie Midnight. And cool. I'm going to get those signed in October at the Night of the Living Dead weekend, which I will try to get you guys footage of for the podcast.
That'll be fun.
Signed by John Russo.
Awesome.
And John Apolis.
Oh, cool.
So sorry, that was a little thing. I was just going to show you stuff. I hate to interrupt the podcast, but there you go.
No, that's awesome. When you do go to that, if you can get some video footage, we can rip the audio and maybe get we
can either pop in some audio video on your site and then rip the audio, and it's all good.
Oh yeah, we'll stick the video in the actual YouTube version of this.
If I get enough balls, because generally speaking, Lee and I don't deal with humans well. If I get enough human interaction balls, if I grow them enough, like if I get drunk, for instance, I will actually try to do many interviews with some of the people. They will definitely be small interviews. I mean, I'm sorry, guys, they will be tiny, but I will try to get something.
John Amplis, even a couple words from him would be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Martin himself, that would be pretty fucking cool. Yep. So look forward to that, guys, in October. Bonus content coming your way.
Did you ever see a film at such a young age it left you traumatized with cinematic wounds? Necrophilia. It's a dead issue, man. Don't push it. Cinema Psyops is a weekly podcast documenting an ongoing experiment on the mind of an unwilling test subject.
No one should have to watch this movie.
Oh, no one should have to watch this?
No one should have to watch this movie.
Surprisingly, it's not a topic that a lot of people really want to tackle.
I'm shocked, prudes.
I know, really.
Right?
It's the next sexual frontier that no one wants to explore.
I am, in the most sincerest of senses, disappointed in you.
It takes a powerful goddess like Connie, jam her arm down the monster's throat and kill it. Oh, I'm still tripping out over that. Even as a kid, I was like, I gotta find a girl like that. Every week, I get a new look of disappointment that I never thought I could get out of here.
Unimaginable. At 12 years old, you should not be watching this movie.
Obviously.
At 13, you should not be. 14, you shouldn't be. I'm not entirely sure even 17-year-olds should be watching this.
Just because you're offended by something doesn't mean that you have the right to demand that it doesn't exist. Watching this film again, I had all of this little nerd glee with everything that kept
little
popping
history
up.
doll popping up
absolutely.
at you.
So I totally loved this film.
Hey, I know why you couldn't see that. It's because your brain's warped from watching this shit at 12 years old.
Yeah, this is a rough movie. I told you ahead of time when we were getting ready to do it that it was
How
going to be a
did
rough
you watch
one.
this shit at 12?
Because physical wounds heal, cinematic ones don't. Listen to Cinema Psyops.
Looking for something different in your podcast library? Then why not check out the podcast Under the Stairs? I'm the host Duncan McLeish, and joining me each week will be a special guest as we examine some classic, old school horror favourites, as well as some modern classics. That's not to say that we don't tackle some of the, let's say, more questionable entries into the horror genre. And if all that wasn't enough, we have a subset of shows called Baz v Horror, where our horror novice, the Baz, tackles horror in all shapes and forms to see who will come out victorious. So what are you waiting for? The show can be found at podcastunderthestairs.wordpress.com and on Stitcher and iTunes. The Podcast Under the Stairs is a proud member of Legion Podcast Network. This is Duncan McLeish from Under the Stairs, signing off.
Clytus, I'm bored. What plaything can you offer me today?
An obscure body in the SK system, Your Majesty. The inhabitants refer to it as the planet Earth.
How peaceful it looks.
Most effective, Your Majesty. Will you destroy this Earth?
Destroy it utterly.
Send Rick and Benny in Wool Rocket Ajax.
So, just destroy it?
That's what Ming said. Don't you ever listen?
Well, there's no arguing with Ming.
Hail Ming. Wait! You see those transmissions on the Visua screen?
Crow? Nightmare on Elm Street?
Chud 2? Black Belt Jones?
Nightbreed?
What's a critter?
Oh, I've seen those things.
Flash? I guess we could wait a while before the destruction.
Yeah, and watch the movies.
And talk about them.
The Hail Ming Power Hour. Disobedience to Ming. For now.
You can find us at Legion Podcast.
You can find us on Facebook,
iTunes.
We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram.
At You know what? Just Google it for yourself.
Just Google it, you bastages.
Hail Ming. Breaking 2? Electric Boogaloo?
Samurai Cop?
Army of Darkness?
Flashdance?
We might destroy the planet if it's Flashdance.
Movies need only 3 things. Badasses.
You tell me who you want done, and I'll do the hell out of it.
A chick with drive who don't take no jive.
Boobs.
Do you know that the female breast, known to be the source of life since Eve, can be deadly weapons?
And body counts.
Body count. The mathematics of murder and menace.
The BB and BC podcast is your source for exploitation film discussion of B-movies. You can find the show on iTunes and Stitcher Radio by searching for BB and BC podcast. You can also listen to each episode directly from the show's website located at badassesboobsandbodycounts.com.
Let's go to work.
So we can move on now to the main event for tonight. It's going to be Django from 1966.
A century ago on the low hills along the border between the southern states and turbulent Mexico, a mystery man appeared. A man with a sad, impenetrable face.
Django, have you never loved again? Love will live on, life must go on, for you cannot spend your life regretting. Django,
Who was that man? What was his secret?
It's not important. And if I bothered you, will you accept my apology?
He was pitiless in revenge, quick to decide and a master of every weapon. A man everybody would like to have seen dead.
Yeah, his name is Django.
Django, the title of a film you'll never forget. Django.
How many men you got left? You tongue-tied? Or don't want to tell me?
Too bad, Maria. Django, an audacious man of action, capable of a tender, hopeless love which could only last a day, but a day which was worth all eternity.
I'm glad I made you feel like a real woman. Very glad. I mean
Django, a new, ruthless, violent film. Featuring a great new star, Franco Nero. And a great supporting cast.
Sun will be shining.
Directed by Sergio Corbucci, who is also known for several other spaghetti westerns: Compañeros from 1970, The Mercenary from 1968, Navajo Joe with with the bandit himself playing an Indian. Why can I not think of his name right off the bat? Smoking the Bandit.
Burt Reynolds?
Burt Reynolds. Burt Reynolds playing an Indian, yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
dear.
Goddamn.
Well,
And
Clint from MASH did it on F Troop, so why not?
yeah, he also did the Hellbenders in 1967, and of course the Great Silence in 1968, which is heralded as one of the great spaghetti westerns of all time. Written by Sergio Corbucci, Bruno Corbucci, Perio Vivarelli, Franco Rossetti, Jose Gutierrez Messio, and starring Franco Nero as Django, Jose Baldo as General Hugo Rodriguez, Loredana Luziak as Maria, Angel Alvarez as Nathaniel the bartender, Gino Perrins as Brother Jonathan, Simon Ariglia as Miguel, Eduardo, Jesus, I'm bad at this, Farjardo as Major Jackson. Daniel, I'll let you go to the synopsis.
I'm really looking forward to the next 6 weeks of listening to you stumble through Italian names.
Oh, it's going to be great. It's gonna be so fun for the audience especially. Yeah.
For the audience, really, they're just going to skip forward 30 seconds whenever that comes up.
And
Yeah.
Borneo sharded in my pantsio.
The film opens as our titular hero drags a coffin through horrible, wet, sticky mud. It's a long sequence as the theme song plays in full, and Django seems beat down by the world around him, left only to wander while dragging the symbol of literal death. In other words, we're a long fucking way from Monument Valley. Django comes across the gorgeous Maria, a mixed-race prostitute being tied to a bridge and whipped by a gang of Mexican bandits, presumably without consent. Just when we think we can take no more, a shot rings out and the bandits are dead. Not because of Django, but because of a group of masked Ku Klux Klan-like soldiers, who we later learn are led by the racist ex-Confederate Major Jackson. Django is himself confronted by the henchmen, dispatches them easily, and offers protection to the suffering woman. They go to a nearby town, seemingly deserted except for a tiny whorehouse, a bartender, and a man named Nathaniel, who explains that this border town is essentially a neutral zone between the Mexican revolutionaries and the rampaging ex-Confederate soldiers. Nathaniel is paying protection money to Jackson, and turns a bit of a blind eye to the men's mistreatment of the professional ladies. Django's having none of that, however, and after confronting a couple of the racist dickbags, he guns down the entire group, save Jackson himself, who promises to come back with every man he's got, 48 to be precise. When Jackson returns with his unstoppable army, Django is unflappable, calmly lighting a cigar for himself, for he knows what we do not, that within the coffin is not a dead body, but a fully functioning machine gun, which he uses to annihilate Jackson's group in moments. Jackson himself escapes, and soon Hugo, the leader of the Mexican revolutionaries, is making plans to steal Jackson's supply of gold from his military base. The two do just that, but Django suspects Hugo is planning on double-crossing him out of his share of the loot, so manages to rig his machine gun in a way that will kill a large number of Hugo's men, and sets off with the entire supply of precious metal. He gets quite far in this endeavor, at that, and is arguing with Maria about whether she can come along with him or not when the coffin slips and begins being submerged in quicksand. Django nearly drowns trying to get the gold, but is saved by Maria, only to discover that Hugo and a few of the surviving Mexicans are waiting for him. They break Django's hands, first with a rifle butt, then with horse's hooves, and the now crippled hero must work to save Maria, who is in the process, has a gunshot wound to her shoulder. Major Jackson, it is learned, is coming back to get even with Django, and Django meets him in the graveyard, seemingly barely even to hold a pistol, much less use it. When he is confronted by Jackson, however, he regains his preternatural shooting ability and quickly dispatches the remaining men, and then walks off into the distance, as the camera pans across the graveyard and the still warm corpses of the racist murderers.
And this was one of the first films to really sort of take the mantle that Sergio Leone threw down. This is one of the first Italian westerns to really kind of take up that style and that aesthetic. Corbucci had actually done several, well, not several, but a few westerns before this, and like a lot of the Italian westerns at the time before Leone really sort of hit the scene, most of them were kind of more retreads of American westerns. This is one of the first really bright spots in the genre as far as imitations go from Leone. So, actually, I'll throw it to Paul since he's returning. What are your kind of initial thoughts on this film there, Paul?
Well, overall, I like it. I mean, it's gritty, it's dirty. I mean, it does have that kind of Lone Ranger kind of vibe to it. This desolate, tortured soul kind of coming out of nowhere to kind of just not even save the day. It's kind of like he's dealing with his own demons the whole time. It's pretty interesting. It shows a more complex character than some people might get out of this film. He's a very complex person. I like kind of like that lone gunfighter vibe. I don't watch a lot of westerns. So for me, this one is definitely something that I'll remember for quite a long time. There is a lot of racial tension and things like that in the film too. But the one thing I got out of the whole film that other people might not get, there isn't one fucking good person in this whole film. They're all kind of shit. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like, you know, hey, you know, it's kind of a fun shoot 'em up at the same time too. It has this. I mean, I take it for more seriously than a fun shoot 'em up, but at the same time, it's like, wow, everybody in this film is a dirtbag. It's pretty interesting. It's like there's no way to run where you don't get shit on your shoes. It's an interesting way, and it's a weird place to find someone trapped in that you know got there through their own misdoings. Kind of like, I hate to border another film you guys did, but kind of like Ravenous. Nobody got there because they were a good guy. They got there because they fucked up. And that's kind of interesting. And I get this, like, I kind of got that from Ravenous now that I see Django. You know, that kind of thing. So it's pretty interesting. Good film.
Nice. Daniel, your initial kind of thoughts on this?
There's nowhere to go without getting shit on your shoes. That's a really nice. You know, I should have said that instead of reading that whole summary there.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's very much part of that. I mean, this gritty reality. It really does distance itself from the kind of classic genre, the Western genre. It's one of the greatest of the spaghetti westerns, at least, you know, in my opinion. You know, it's almost a deceptively simple plot at first. Like there is a lot where you're kind of watching it and just kind of following along, and it's like, oh yeah, there's a gunslinger. He walks in, some bad people show up, he shoots them dead. You know, it's really only on the like second or third watch through that I think I really get some of the nuances of it. And I mean, there's an obvious political angle, which, you know, I'm always interested in. But beyond that, you almost get the sense that Django is this like almost supernatural force. You know, that he exists in this beyond folk hero. But I mean, he can just kill anybody. Like there's no doubt in your mind at any point until the very end, like whether Django is going to prevail in any, you know, I mean, he literally kills 5 guys with like 3 shots.
Like, yeah, he would have been pretty good in like RoboCop 2, Terminator 2, yeah. He would have been
I mean, he's that kind of unstoppable, and I think that's interesting when you kind of put it as he's this guy, he's literally dragging a coffin around, he's literally this just kind of wanderer, and yet he exists in this world that's full of gray and black morality, you know, where there are the really evil guys, and then there are the kind of mostly evil guys, you know, and then there are the kind of people in the middle who are beset on all sides, who are just kind of like compromised by the reality. I mean, you know, like it very much. I mean, the fact that this film begins and ends in mud is not a coincidence, I think.
Yeah.
This is very, very visually indicative of the kind of thing that the film is really trying to suggest. That's kind of overall thoughts. Brilliant film.
The opening with him walking through the mud, dragging the coffin through the mud, I think that kind of sets the tone like very, very well. That this isn't your typical Western hero at all. He's not riding a horse, for one thing. He's definitely not above the mud. And if he was riding a horse in a typical Western, it'd probably be just a dusty trail, not a muddy one, you know.
Right.
But this guy's dragging all of his sins with him behind in a coffin, kind of symbolically. and he's walking through the muck of the worst of humanity. You know, like, there's nothing good is going to come out of what he is confronting and walking towards. And you only sort of get subtly, after a while throughout the film, what his real motivations are. And even then, his motivations aren't all that honorable. I mean, he's essentially trying to avenge the death of his wife. But that's almost kind of secondary after a while, because he kind of figures, hey, I can kind of set myself up as well and get really rich in the process. And it's actually that kind of diversion from his initial path, sends him down. Like, that's what ends up having his hands crippled and putting him in a real bad spot. And I mean, he just uses people. Like, this is a true anti-hero in the truest sense of the word. He's not Clint Eastwood's Man with No Name, although he's modeled after that character. And the story is essentially kind of a retread of Yojimbo as well, just like A Fistful of Dollars was. But that's just kind of bare bones skeleton kind of thing for Corbucci to really like delve into like a really dirty character, like
there's a thing about him that never goes away, and it's like, I hate to quote a Megadeth thing, but there is something about him that never goes away. That killing is my business and business is good kind of vibe. That like, I can just keep killing you sons of bitches and making money. I'm cool with that. Like, he's not this, like, a tortured soul that's trying to become an angel at the end. He's, I'm still always going to be kind of shit.
Yeah, he knows he's buried in the shit, and he's kind of okay with that. He's kind of, like, this is the world, and that's fine. And, I mean, first, he's not going to do anything for Maria. He's just kind of standing off to the side. This really is, he gets caught between this war, between these two kind of murdering gangs, and he does it almost on a whim. I mean, you really don't get why he does decide to intervene. Like, it was fine. It was fine when the Mexicans were whipping her, but then when the Klan shows up, okay, now I got to do something about this.
Yeah.
I was waiting for that, like, Knight in Shining Armor, because I was just watching, but the Knight in Shining Armor was kind of shit too. So now I fucking have to do something. Congratulations. Like.
Yeah,
damn.
I mean, because Maria, she's just this half Mexican, half Indio prostitute who is being basically kind of bartered back and forth between these two groups that are warring in this border town, essentially. She's kind of outlived her usefulness to both of them, I guess. And Django, I think he just kind of sees opportunity, because his initial quest is to get revenge on Major Jackson. Okay, I can probably use her in some regard, and he's also already set up a relationship with the Mexican revolutionary, like, previous to this. So
right.
So he's going into this town with a plan already. He's not like Yojimbo or Clint Eastwood's Man with No Name, who walk into the town into an existing situation and doesn't know who the players are and actually has to learn as he goes. Django already has a plan. He's already ready to pit these two groups against each other, so they'll kill each other off enough that he can finish the job. But then, of course, his motivations get a little twisted after a while, where he sees the opportunity of, I can avenge my wife, and I can also walk off of a lot of fucking gold. I think his sort of amorality comes out of the fact that the death of his wife just kind of ended his life. Like, he has those lines to Maria about he can no longer love anybody. Like, it's all gone for him, and anyone who tries to attach themselves to him are probably going to end up like his wife did. And so he's got a sort of that fatalistic bent to his character now, where he's just trying to get whatever he can get for himself at this point.
I like there's other aspects, and like you see this kind of mentality later. I'd hate to say Django did this. I hate to say that without knowing. It's like when you were talking about it, now that I've watched the film too, and you were bringing it up, I just think of Mel Gibson's character in Lethal Weapon. The same deal. And every time he loves somebody, they end up fucking dead. You know what I mean? That's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like, I think this film now has touched things that I already know. And I think that's very important, that I actually sat down and watched Django. Because I do believe it has reaching hands that has touched a lot of the film industry as a whole. Now that I've actually sat down and watched it.
Oh yeah, the influence of this film is kind of shocking, actually, if you get into it and read about, like, just how much this film has influenced people. Like, we all well know now, we've kind of established this in past podcasts and stuff, where we've talked about how the Italian film industry at the time, from about the 60s to the late 80s or so, was big on ripping off every trend that was going, and even ripping themselves off, where anything that was popular, they had to cash in on that name. So this film has roughly about 30 unofficial sequels to it, where they actually use a character named Django in the actual film. Whether it bears a resemblance to Franco Nero and his character at all, it doesn't really matter, but they do call it, like, there's about 30 films that call the character Django and try to purport it to be a sequel to Django of some sort. Then there are, depending on how you count it, there's anywhere from several dozen to about 200 movies out there with the title Django in the title that were spaghetti westerns. Most of these are just retitling of existing films. In Germany, Django was such a major fucking hit that every Franco Nero film that came out was called Django something. It didn't even matter if it was a fucking spaghetti western. That's how big he was. Like, Franco Nero is a major fucking star internationally. He's never been so big in the U.S., but this guy is like the George Clooney of his time back in the day in Europe. And not only that, he's a great fucking actor. Like, he is fucking fantastic.
Phenomenal in this. Also, I just want to say, I hesitate to wonder what the German version of Stridulum, what that title was. Django and the Magic Girl, I
have to look that up now and see if they actually did that, yeah.
There's this, Eastwood, you think about the Man with No Name trilogy. Eastwood is so capable of kind of portraying this kind of hardness that doesn't really have any kind of he's just this kind of hard man, but he's making decisions. But I think what's interesting about Nero's performance is that there is this softness within him. You do get this sense that even when he's making these really hard decisions, even when he is kind of out for himself and trying to get the gold, there is this sense of there is this humanity. There is this he knows that he has a sense of kind of right and wrong. He's just kind of not caring so much. He's just sort of like, okay. And I do think that there is this kind of relationship that he starts to build with Maria, as the film goes on. Even though he's not necessarily showing it, I think that there is this sense of he gives a shit. It's not just manipulating the people around him. I think there are other ways for him to go Jackson into sending all of his men into his machine gun than saving this girl.
He does have this kind of coldness to him where he wants to go straight ahead to, I just want to grab whatever I can grab and get my revenge and get out of here, but he gets pushed back to his humanity in parts, like in little spurts. Every time he's interacting with Maria, it comes back to him. And at the same time, he's like, I can never connect with this woman on any sort of real emotional level. I've got to keep her at a distance, but at the same time, I do want to save her. And I love how his bad decisions lead him back to the bridge that we see him at the start of the film, that he finds Maria, and the gold sinks in the coffin down into the quicksand. And I think it's a really good visual metaphor of basically his diversion from his original path has led him to his downfall in that regard. And it almost in a different movie, if the movie had ended sort of on that note, it would be pretty interesting, I think, as well. But at the same time, I really dig fucking seeing him in the fucking graveyard with his. He has to use his teeth to take the fucking screws out of the trigger guard,
right?
So he can use his stump fucking hands now.
So here's what I'm going to ask you: Is he playing that up, and then suddenly when they kind of show up, he's like, oh yeah, no, and then actually I can still kill you guys.
Kind of like a rope-a-dope.
Yeah. Is that kind? I mean, I can't decide whether he's he knows he's being watched, and so he's playing it up and getting them to kind of approach him, or if there is this sort of almost supernatural element to where he gets this 5 seconds of genius he still has.
Well, it's weird because there's this level of hyperrealism in the film to a certain degree, and then there's this level of sort of fantasy almost of superhero kind of comic book stuff, and you'll see this a lot in a lot of spaghetti westerns as we go along, where there's a lot of grittiness, there's a lot of realism. It definitely takes the smiling hero of the sort of classic American westerns and turns it on its head. It goes much more for, these people were covered in dirt, they were living in shit, they were living in poverty a lot of times, Everybody in this film's fucking dirty. Django's covered in mud all the time, but he's got this almost supernatural ability with the gun, to kill people, and you'll find a lot of western heroes and spaghetti westerns kind of have that ability. I think the idea that they're trying to put forth here is that deep down, he has that such a desire for revenge ultimately that he managed to persevere, and of course he's just that good. But at the same time, I think Corbucci kind of paces it in a way that you're kind of doubting. You're kind of like, maybe Django will get killed, because Corbucci is a different spaghetti western director. Like,
I was not expecting that. The first time I saw the ending, I was definitely on that, like, well, he's fucked.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole point is, like, we're going to end up with Jackson victorious, and, mustache twirling villain wins. Like, that's where I expected it to end. And so the fact that he decides to give us the happy ending, it's got to be a deliberate choice, because also up until that moment, Django has been fucking unstoppable. I mean, he's just like, as long as he's got a gun. The fist fight scene, by the way, I want to talk about the fist fight scene.
Yeah, he gets his ass kicked.
but like, how brilliant is that scene, right? My God, I mean, I just admire the direction. It's such a phenomenal scene. But I legitimately you look at that scene where his hands are broken, and I mean, you think, like, that's about as bad as what anybody, in any movie gets. I mean, that's almost like a serial killer move. John Doe from Seven could have done that shit. Like, I broke your hands because what you relied on for your business was your hands, sort of thing. And then when and having the horses, like, stomp on them and stuff, like, oh God, I mean, that's just, it hurts my hands just thinking about it now. And then he's still trying to do the right thing, right? I mean, and I think that's why, you can call him amoral, but I think that amoral isn't. He does have hints of goodness in him.
I don't think he's totally immoral. I think it's just like there's some amoral elements to his personality that have come out of the death of his wife, where it's just kind of frozen him in certain aspects. But
what happens is with people is when they lose what they have, they see what they want, and sometimes that doesn't always play well with their psyche. Because, believe me, I understand. You see, like, oh, well, I want this now, and I want that now, and I'll do whatever I can to get it because I lost the thing that I actually wanted. That kind of thing. So it does fuck with people. And this film does play that off extremely well. And a lot of people do a lot of bad things to get that. And even though Django does have this kind of twisted view of reality at this time, his true nature, which is the good guy, does come out. Why is he still remains to this day the good guy in the film in people's hearts, is because no matter how much he sees the opportunistic side of things, he still tries to do the right thing near the end, which is ultimately his downfall too. And the end for me was definitely something that I loved, and it wasn't exactly a good ending because he still has to fight through everything and still live a meager existence alone, waiting for the next opportunity to come through. So it's definitely a very deep ending with a lot of different kind of chaotic emotions going around, and the pain and the reality and that grittiness just shines through so much on the end that the ending is something that will stick with most people for quite a long time.
That's true, because he is left broken in the end. I mean, he's got a victory, but at that point, is his victory really
it's all hollow.
Anything?
It's all hollow.
Is it worth anything? Because the town he walks into is destroyed. The prostitutes have no jobs. Nathaniel is dead. Both gangs are dead. Everyone's basically dead. I looked up the kill count for this film. Mm-hmm. He kills 95 people in this film.
That's better than Jason in like part 1 through 9. You know what I mean? Like, it's pretty good. Well, he wasn't in 1, so okay, geeks, calm down. I meant 2 through 9.
Yeah, there you go.
Those are first-person shooter numbers, Like,
yeah.
Yeah, that's. There's a lot of, and the thing is, that's the thing is, like, it's almost more like a psychiatric film, or it's like a more look at, like, okay, personal vendettas, personal self. Because he hates himself because his wife died. Like, he hates his decisions that he made to make this happen. And when you keep fighting for these negative things, these vindictive things, and trying to, have something at the end, all it does is ruin everything that you have in your life and destroys absolutely, literally, in this film, everything around you. So it's it's more like a very, very in-depth look at a psychosis.
Well, what if he hadn't gone for the gold? What if he'd let Hugo keep the gold and just like, okay, fine, when you get in power, you'll pay me back? Like, if he'd been able to let that go at that point.
Well, he wouldn't have, because he has trust issues. See?
Well, yeah, I
mean, I'm going to cry myself to sleep now. We're good.
Well, he would have been better off. Like, that's the thing. Like,
absolutely.
That opportunistic streak comes in where he makes some bad decisions, and I mean, his bad decisions essentially kind of lead to a lot more deaths than there should have been.
I mean, he murders, all these Mexican revolutionaries with the machine gun just as a diversion so he can get the gold out.
Yeah.
You know, which is, really, that makes him as bad as anybody in the film.
Right.
You know, in terms of,
right.
That's
there is no good guy in this film. It's amazing. It's amazing way to shoot a film that I don't think many films even after have tried. It's very interesting.
Yeah, you got to root for the least evil motherfucker essentially in this film. I mean, I guess you can argue that probably Maria is probably. Well, actually, Maria and Nathaniel are probably the more semi-moral good people in the film.
Nathaniel is compromised because he's doing the payback thing. He's kind of letting the two sides kind of war. He's kind of staying neutral. So he's not.
He doesn't really have a choice though.
Right. But Maria definitely, I feel like has this kind of. We don't really know her background, and that's kind of I was gonna say, who are the best people in the film? The whores.
Because they have no real agency. They're just sort of stuck in their situation. This is kind of reality of a woman in the Old West.
So like Maria is the Mary Magdalene of the whole situation. She's the blessed whore. You know what I mean? It's just that unfortunately, there you go.
But she, at the very least, Corbucci is. And as we go through these, by the way, it's going to be a recurring theme that women aren't treated very well in these films.
They should be.
That's just European films in general at this period.
Well, that's westerns as well. Westerns are just not.
But I will say Corbucci is actually quite a bit better on this stuff than most spaghetti western directors are. And Maria at least gets to do some stuff in this film compared to a lot of the contemporaries at the time.
That's the thing about this film. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that's the thing that's the thing when it was written that is so interesting, because when Django sees Maria, he sees how important she can be. I can use her to do this, I can use her to do that. She is important because of this, she's important because of that, and stretches her multifaceted, importance in the film that quickly. That's why I'm saving this bitch, because it's not because she can just sleep with me now and again and I'll kill her later. She is. They set up this very structured thing and showing her importance and showing how multifaceted she can be in the film and letting her do things too. For her own vindictive nature.
He opens up to Maria before they sleep together. There is a, and I think that they are. For 1966 and for this genre and for this, I think that the film does sort of treat them as equals in some ways. Once you kind of grade it on that very steep curve.
Well, they see a connection that they're both damaged people, and they connect on that level. In Django, because he is a guy. He's an opportunist. He sees people he can use. He sees that, hey, this is a woman who is both tough. She's not going to back down. She has a fucking beef with these people. I can use that as well. So he sees that in her, and that of course comes out in her character throughout the movie, where she is pretty fucking tough, and she knows what she wants. She wants to get the fuck out of there, and if she can. Fuck Django and have little Djangos of their own, but of course Django's not up for that, because he's like, I can never love another woman.
Little Djangitos,
Little Djangitos.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Django is a Romani name, and the Romanis are kind of obviously they are travelers and drifters and that sort of thing, which I think is interesting, thematically.
That's just part of it, and also basically the name Django is Corbucci directly stole this basically from Django Reinhardt, who the jazz guitarist, and of course there's the motif of the crippled hands at the end. And Django Reinhardt had crippled hands. He was a jazz guitarist who had crippled hands, so I think that's something maybe a lot of people didn't actually pick up on initially when this was released, but that is a direct kind of thing. Again, I'll go back to Corbucci. I think he's highly underrated, even though people kind of recognize him as like the secondary, like, to Leone. He is a fucking brilliant director, I think. I love a lot of his films, not just his spaghetti westerns, and he puts a lot more depth and interesting ideas in his stuff than even stuff I don't think Leone would have thought of in some of his films. So
I mean, some of the framing, some of the direction, some of the performances even, are way more interesting than you would really give it credit for. And again, a lot of it is subtle enough that it takes a couple of viewings. I mean, I've seen this 3 times now, and it takes a little bit to kind of pick up on some of the subtleties of it. So I would recommend seeing this at least twice if you're kind of listening to this.
And I mean, try to. If you're gonna watch this, I gotta really say, like, try to pay attention to the characters and try to pay attention to the story, and try not to get distracted by the fact that this is obviously a B-level picture, even for spaghetti westerns. This is a very low-budget picture, and there are some frayed corners to it, and there is that sense of unbelievability. If you're not familiar with the spaghetti western genre, you have to take certain leaps of logic. Like, some of the stuff is very cartoonish, comic book, to a certain degree. I mean, just the fact that Django has this big fucking Gatling gun in his coffin that can shoot infinite bullets, and the bullets in the actual gun, and the bullet belt, does not move at all.
Right.
And the gun does not overheat and stop after shooting for 3 seconds in a row, which it would have happened.
And they were water cooled, weren't they? That's why the whole point is most of those were water cooled guns. So, but the thing is, people that are into the style, I guess, those genres of the B movies, they already know this. They already look past this kind of stuff. And I agree. As a guy who only watched the film once, probably on fast forward. Not saying that.
Never.
A secondary look would have been very, very helpful for me to get other things out of the film as well. But unlike most films that I do talk about on this podcast, I actually did technically watch it, unlike the other films. So, that's good. But, that's just me, just pointing it out there. But, yeah, definitely give it a second go. And most people don't notice, know, or give a fuck that the gun's not working right. But, yes, you will notice that, especially with that Gatling gun scene.
Yeah, I mean, if you're one of those, and I encounter these people, like, I talk to people at westerns and stuff like that, and I encounter some people who are just taken out of the film because the gunplay and the guns themselves are inaccurate. I mean, there is actually pretty much only one gun in this film that is kind of historically accurate. Most of the other guns in this are not historically accurate to the time period at all. And this is the kind of thing you'll see throughout most spaghetti westerns at the same time, because they just got a hold of whatever fucking prop guns they could get to make their films, because these are all low-budget productions, right? So, they have to go with something. If you're going to nitpick this film to that degree, then you're probably watching the film for the exact wrong reasons anyway.
Go read Guns and Ammo and jerk off already.
I did that. Funny you said that. I did that 3 times today.
Oh,
that's
geez.
awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that the fact of the machine gun, that makes no sense. The fact that he has this, that just sells him even more as this almost avenging angel kind of character. As imperfect as he is, I mean, he kind of works as this figure of justice in a way, because he is destroying these even worse people. Even though he kills Nathaniel, and even though the prostitutes don't have work anymore, you can definitely see, in a few years, maybe other people move into town, and they don't have to deal with the racist dickbags anymore, who literally make sport out of killing Mexicans. So,
Well, at the same time, I do love the mysticism, the superstition about the child coffin. The coffin just made everything so much fucking cooler in the film for me.
Yeah.
Watching the bar fight when the Mexicans keep like almost falling into it. They go, whoa, fuck, and they run away. I'm like, I love that. It's great. I love that so much. So this kind of the fear that it kind of brings into. Absolutely love the shifting eyes. There's so many shifting eyes. I think they over-shifted eyes sometimes, but there's so many shifting eyes in this film. Like, everyone's looking at everybody, and everyone's like eyeing the coffin the whole time. Like, what the fuck is up with this guy and stuff. When he first sits there and just wants some fucking food and some and a beer, like, come on, let's do this.
I love how that fucking wormy ass preacher. But by the way, the ear cutting scene that Quentin Tarantino directly ripped for Reservoir Dogs. I love how that wormy-ass fucking preacher walks in there and confronts Django, and Django just looks up at him nonchalantly and spits the fucking cork in his face. Like, it's fucking badass as fuck, man. Like, that is great. The way he spits it in his face, too, it's like, you're nothing to me. Fuck off. Like...
Yep.
I mean,
there's definitely a lot of this.
Yeah, that's Nero's performance there. I mean, the best thing about this is, like, Nero's performance, it's not hampered by the fact that, depending on what DVD version you get, most people who listen to this are going to either listen to the American language track, or they're going to listen to the Italian track that was dubbed by Nando Gazzalo, was brought in to dub the voice for Nero at this point, because Nero's 23 years old, and they felt he was too young to portray the character to a certain degree. Like, even the line, like the wrinkles you see on his eyes, that's all makeup design. That's not his wrinkles.
Wow. No, I think he did a great job. It was perfect.
Yeah, no, he doesn't look 23 here.
There's a film right after that I saw. I didn't watch both films because I barely fast forwarded through this piece of shit. So I mean, I didn't have a lot of time for the other one. But like, there was Django, The Return of Django, or Django Strikes Again. And that Django looks like, basically, on the cover, it was more of that really, really rough but sexually adventurous Django. It was like one of those Harlan Quinn romance Djangos.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so, like, it didn't play, like, I didn't even bother watching it. You know what I mean? But, like, the first Django just fit everything that I was hoping for so well.
I'll say this about Nero. He's a fucking beautiful man. The guy is in his 70s now, and he doesn't look that old at all. Like, this is a guy who's been remarkably preserved over the years. Like, he's one of those guys who's just got genetically gifted beyond all fucking belief. the guy is fucking handsome as shit. If I was fucking gay...
What do you mean,
he's almost got those Paul Newman eyes as well, you know, like he's almost got that kind of, you know, there's a Robert Redford quality to him, you know.
Yes, yeah.
And yet with this kind of raw energy that even Redford never really had, this kind of gritty energy. So he's a fascinating performer.
Yeah. The dubbing is not his voice, depending on what version you see, and most versions you're going to see are not going to be his voice. His physical performance, he still shines through, like he still brings it. What do you guys think of the main villain here, Major Jackson? Because I thought he was kind of an interesting character. Like, he kind of speaks to, like, he's definitely set up, like, they don't spell out specifically that he's the Ku Klux Klan, but he's a very Ku Klux Klan, racist, Confederate kind of character. I thought it was kind of interesting, though, that he is one of these guys who is racist, but at the same time he'll work with Mexicans or any other sort of person of different skin color if it's convenient for him, you know, like because he pals up with the Mexican government and their soldiers to take out the Mexican revolutionaries, and he's cool with Nathaniel having a full-blooded Mexican prostitute in his brothel. So he's very much that kind of hypocrite, but at the same time, you know, just fucking evil as fuck too. Like, well, he guns down Nathaniel at the end of the film, just coldly. Like, Nathaniel says, "Django's hands are broken. He'll be no trouble to you at all," and he just, okay, bye, Nathaniel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found Jackson to be a really interesting character, and I mean, it you know, you're right. It speaks to the reality of the kind of politics of the situation, and that is, you know, yeah, I'm not just gonna out and out murder every brown person I see. Like, I don't like them if they don't mean anything to me. Yeah, I'll literally turn them into sport. Yeah, let's have a great time. Shoot the Mexicans.
Yeah.
Let's go off. Let's spread the white genes around. Let's you know, do. But ultimately, it's like, well, you know, this one's useful to us for now. And that's kind of just as far as it goes. So, yeah, I really thought that I thought the racial implications, especially for 66, were pretty pointed, especially on a second watch. I mean, Django's basically picking fights and going like, "You guys are racist," and that's why he kills them, you know. Yeah. Which is definitely one of those things that feels like very 1966. This very kind of it exists in that moment, you know.
And Eduardo Fajardo is still alive today. He's sort of semi-retired now. He still does stage stuff, but he's living in Hercical, Almeria. He's been in over 2,000 television programs and in 180 films and 75 plays. And we've actually seen him in some other stuff that we've covered on this podcast. He's been in Nightmare City. He was in the Spanish scenes for the Spanish version of Oasis of the Zombies. So
Daniel's favorite.
Yeah, and some other people in this cast have been in some stuff we've seen, but a lot of these people are going to show up in future films that we're going to be covering in this sort of initial look at spaghetti westerns, so we'll sort of cover them as we go along. Should we just mention briefly the sequel to this from 1987, Django Strikes Again?
Yeah, sounds good. Let's do
Yeah,
it.
I did briefly mention it. That was enough.
That was so. This was a different director in this one, but it basically had Corbucci as an advisor role kind of thing because he was pretty sick at this point. He died in 1990, I believe. So they bring Django back 20 years afterwards, and he's a converted monk trying to escape his past of a gunfighter, and then his estranged woman that he's shacked up with tells him, "We have a child, and the child has been abducted by these Hungarian soldiers who were, for a while, in cahoots with the Mexican government until the revolution, and then now they're basically just slave traders and mercenary pirates going on their own." I know you watched it, Daniel. What did you think of it?
I thought, like, wow, it doesn't feel very connected to the original, except in kind of the character, but I mean, it feels very, I mean, if the first one is kind of playing with these political angles in terms of kind of like Reconstruction-era America, the sequel kind of 20 years later is playing with ideas about like this kind of colonial Latin America in a way. There's this very kind of Banana Republic kind of thing going on.
Doesn't it feel like a Vietnam movie, like Chuck Norris missing in action?
It feels like those 80s Central. It feels like I kept thinking of Commando, that Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, Commando or Rambo too. Rambo.
Yeah, like it's very clearly, or the No Retreat, No Surrender 2. It kind of reminds me of, like, there are a ton of these movies that kind of take place in like vaguely ill-defined jungle with white dude coming in with a machine gun to save natives from rich white guy who's oppressing them. Like, it's very much that kind of story,
Yeah.
It's a really effective version of it. I mean, especially for, kind of low budget and, kind of exists in that way. I mean, I kind of was watching it and I'm like, man, there's some fascinating kind of ideas that you could, especially like connecting this straight back to the Western genre, kind of saying this is ostensibly the same character. And so, this kind of figure of questionable morality then kind of goes off and becomes a monk for a while, and then is kind of brought out of that in order to go on this adventure in this, colonialist narrative. There's some really interesting connections you could draw there that I didn't quite put all those pieces together, but there's something really interesting going on there. I found it to be a fascinating watch.
The first time I watched it, I kind of hated it because I think I just kind of lazily watched it. Rewatching
Well, it's not a Western. It's not. It's in no sense. It's in no sense like a direct sequel. Like, if what you get out of Django is the kind of like, oh, nice like Western motifs and it's kind of interesting and kind of Leone and all that kind of stuff, and or the score. This is straight up like Rambo picture. Like, this is very 80s action movie set in a jungle. So you have to almost connect it. It's a different genre entirely.
Yeah, although it kind of has the aesthetic and looks still of like the spaghetti westerns to a certain degree, just because. It was a cheap Italian movie, yeah. So it kind of looks that way, right? I think there's some interesting ideas. They did try to go for some interesting stuff. I don't think it really comes together all that well, but Nero is still really good in it. And
well, any film that includes a lepidopterist character, I'm going to kind of appreciate just for that.
I like that Nubian servant / dominatrix. With the whip.
Yeah, that was a really weird. I mean, God, and. Yeah, there's some really interesting stuff going on there.
And then Donald Pleasance is in it, of all people.
Yeah.
He's just
now
there.
I have to watch it.
He's just there in a white top hat and a fucking white suit, and he's just...
He's the comic relief.
Yes. He's this Scottish fucking bug expert who is basically just captured by these Hungarians because the lead Hungarian bad guy is into butterfly collection and moth collection and stuff. So he's like
a little entomology chaos. That's all
yeah, he's an entomologist, and
so
he's like
basically this film made Silence of the Lambs happen. Okay, we good.
Yeah,
we're good.
there we go. There we go. Yeah,
I mean, there are hints of that. Like, I mean, you know, it's playing with some of the same ideas.
Yeah. So there's the one true sequel from Django, by the way, for everybody. That's the one that you can actually say is a true sequel.
Although John Sayles is working on a new sequel now.
Yes, and Franco Nero is filming currently in this.
And it's coming back. It's going to be set 50 years after the original, which I think is amazing.
I'm fucking
so excited.
I am too. I want to see it because Franco Nero still fucking looks good at 70. So he's one where I can actually believe him still being an action hero compared to like Harrison Ford or Arnold Schwarzenegger or one of them. I kind of think Nero can still sell it, like as this old gunfighter being brought back.
This could be Unforgiven, but like, you know.
Yeah.
Well, he's not bedridden, which is nice. So it's not like Django Unchanged. Instead of, you know what I mean? Like, so
nicely done. Nicely done.
You know what I mean? So it's like
brilliant.
Oh, so that's good. That's not adult diaper Django. So we're good. I like that. So that's good.
So there was a remake of Django, like an official remake of Django by Takashi Miike, who's better known for horror movies, like adaptation, stuff like that, called Sukiyaki Western Django. And I'll just say, depending on your taste, I tried to watch this, and goddamn, I couldn't watch it. I mean, Quentin Tarantino is in this as a gunslinger. It's very kind of meta, very homage-y, very kind of on the fucking nose. A little too much for me.
It's Miike.
Well, this is
Tarantino's the gunfighter?
Kind of. Well, he's one of the gunfighters in it.
I could see Tarantino bitching about a bagel he got wrong, not really a gunfighter. Like, I don't get it. Okay, we're good,
Tarantino's a terrible actor. I'll just put it out there. He's
Thank
not
you.
very good. And he's not very good in this, but the movie kind of hides it because the movie is kind of bad. This is like a really bad Takashi Miike movie as far as I'm concerned. It's very stylish. It's very bombastic. And I think it just kind of misses the whole point altogether. You know, if you're looking for a Django remake, that is the one. I will mention quickly some ones you might want to look for that are sort of the unofficial sequels to Django that were kind of made. One we're going to be covering in the next episode, which isn't really an unofficial Django sequel, but it's one of the better sort of steal the name of Django films. Thomas Milan starring in Django Kill, If You Live Shoot from 1967. There is the Gianni Jarconen $10,000 Blood Money from 1967, which is pretty decent. Terence Hill was in Get a Coffin Ready, or also known as Viva Django, in 1968. And a lot of these unofficial Django sequels, by the way, involve Django avenging a dead sibling or a dead spouse. If you take these all as canon, where there's some sort of progression in the storyline, basically Django had this large extended family who have all been murdered, and he's avenged all of them in these films. That's kind of how this goes, but in this one he avenges his wife. Actor Anthony Stephan, who is actually a pretty well-known spaghetti western actor, starred in like over 25 films. More of a direct kind of Clint Eastwood ripoff. His acting is much more stoic and wooden in that kind of frame. But he did Django the Bastard in 1969, which is actually kind of a precursor to High Plains Drifter, because he's kind of a supernatural character in that one, like taking revenge. And then there's W. Django, or A Man Called Django, depending on what title you look for, also starring Anthony Stephan, which is also pretty good. And there's Django Against Sartana. Sartana's a character in Spaghetti Westerns we'll probably cover the second time we go into this, as far as series go. But it's sort of kind of a team-up between two kind of popular character names in Spaghetti Westerns.
And then Django and his amazing friends, and Django Masters of the Universe.
Django and the Super Friends, yeah. And then there's another one, Don't Wait, Django, Shoot, from 1967, which is also pretty good. But those are ones you should look for.
And they're all from this, like in the 60s. I mean, those are pretty recent, direct kind of
Django was so popular that everyone ripped it off. I mean, the box office in the USA was like only 25. Well, no, actually, this is modern box office for the USA. I guess the numbers 2013, a re-release was just like $25,000. In Italy, in its initial release, it had 1.02 million I guess, lira in Italy. In Spain, it was 32.7 million, 3,200,000. But it did very well.
It made a shitload of money.
It really did.
Let's not convert currencies here. It's not that, it made a shitload of money.
But
it made 3 million krona. We got this. There's rubles involved. But at the same time, it's like that's the classic Italian. Once it does well, grab it, run with it, and never stop fucking making money off of it. But at the same time, it does bastardize the first film. But I'm very, it shows how well, and how well appreciated that film is.
Yeah, I mean, that name, that was used for movies and other genres from Italian cinema just because Django was so popular. Like, that name sold so well. This movie was banned in Britain for 20 years or so. Got its first actual release in Britain in 1993. That's how long it was. I think that was kind of the video nasty stuff.
Right. That's not too surprising.
No.
Halloween 2 got released in Germany in 2010.
Yeah.
So that is not too freaking surprising. I don't know. Censorship in Europe is a weird mistress to play with.
Yeah. If you're interested in getting this on DVD or Blu-ray, there are several versions out there. In 2002, Anchor Bay released a Region Zero 2-disc DVD that has Django and Django Strikes Back. Yeah, so that's a double disc you can get that has that, and a lot of unique extras only to the Anchor Bay version on that. That one's probably harder to get. That's probably expensive at this point. There's a 2003 Region 1 2-disc and 1-disc DVD releases from Blue Underground. The 2-disc is pretty extensive, has a lot of good stuff in it. This is the first time Django was released uncut. They found some vault materials. That's the 1-disc is the one I own, where some of the stuff's a little scratchy, but it's still really fucking good. I think the 2-disc has Franco Nero's Italian audio dub on it for the first time. So that's interesting to look for. That's something that I'd actually want to listen to. The Blu-ray format, they have one from Blue Underground, came out in 2010, which I believe also has the Franco Nero audio on it, finally. There's a Blu-ray from Argent Films that is Region Zero from 2013. Depending on what you're looking for, go to dvdbeaver.com if you want to see the differences. And you can pick and choose. But this film has been done a lot of justice in DVD and Blu-ray, so... probably in thanks to Quentin Tarantino to a certain degree, but,
If you're an Amazon Prime member, you can watch this for free right now on Amazon. That's how I watched it. And if you just want to rent it, it's like $3 for rental on Amazon. So it's a really good print of it. It looked gorgeous. So
and it is interesting to see the differences between the English and the Italian tracks. By the way, because you said earlier where they talk about how the major's going to come back with his men, and he says he has 48. In the Italian track, it's just 40. There's just some good subtle differences here and there. So depending on which track you listen to, language-wise, Django's kill counts slightly different.
Still impressive, though slightly different.
But anyone have any final thoughts they want to put towards this one?
I love the end of the film. I like that he uses the cross to support the gun, that kind of symbol of death. He has almost this pariah feel to him that I'm going to, nothing's going to stop me from getting the bad guy, that kind of feel. It does have this kind of silver lining that you feel in your heart at the end of the film that normally the rest of the film just showed you that this is going to turn out badly, guys. Just prepare for that. But they do give you that little breath at the end, but it is a hollow victory. Everything around him in his life is destroyed, and he does walk crippled away into the sun, or hobble, I guess you want to call it, into the sunset. But, I do like the graveyard scene, the cemetery scene. It gives you this dark, bitter realism to it that I really appreciated. And at the same time, I feel like he wasn't just playing. I mean, he was seriously injured. They know he's fucked up, but yet at the same time, I'm not going down like this. He does have this "I'm not going down like this" attitude when he yells. When he yells out right out before he starts firing, it's just boom, yeah. I'm I did have a very, very heroic kind of exclamation at the end there that I did really appreciate. And then, of course, he hobbles to his feet and the rest of the film is the rest of the film. But I definitely appreciated the film in its entirety, and I've never actually seen a Western that has quite that kind of vibe throughout the whole thing and ever shot like that. Little nuances like we talked about before. The fucking town is a mud hole. Like that realism that other Westerns don't give you. That dirty realism. So, I mean, definitely something. Anyone who is a fan of Italian cinema, B cinema, or wants to get into Westerns, this is definitely one to watch. Yeah. As a guy who watched it for the very first time. Definitely awesome.
Anything, Daniel, you want to finish off with? Or
I feel pretty confident. I feel pretty comfortable. I agree with Paul there, actually. Great film. Maybe, if you're kind of listening to this and you haven't seen the film before, you might kind of approach it and kind of you might think we've praised it a little bit too much, especially on a kind of a first, kind of superficial watch through. There is some like kind of plot mechanic stuff in the middle that it does kind of have a very strong beginning and end, and then kind of a lot of a muddle stuff in the middle, kind of as we're kind of following some characters around. Structurally, it does have some issues. Overall, a really great film, a really great performance. And Franco Nero, obviously hugely influential, and just visually and the score. The score by Bacalov.
Bacalov, yeah.
Brilliant score. One of my favorite composers. I was actually listening to a bunch of his stuff on YouTube as I was writing the synopsis. So
Yeah, I should remiss if not to mention Django Unchained at least briefly. How do you think it does as kind of a tribute in a certain way to the original Django? Because I think it does lift kind of some of the plot elements. Tarantino's not making a spaghetti western; he's making his own western that kind of draws some elements from the original film, like the racist angle, the man driven for revenge kind of angle. Ultimately, I think it's a very different film in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I mean, Tarantino's doing something very different, and I have huge thoughts about Tarantino. I'm writing about Tarantino right now, actually. My wife and I did a bonus content episode about Django Unchained, so I've kind of had my thoughts about that film already, or at least some of my thoughts, because I could talk about that fucking film forever. It's a brilliant film. I think that what Tarantino does is he takes that, and because especially watching the sequel, especially watching Strikes Again, there's a very deliberate political angle to both films, and I think that Tarantino picks up on that and then inverts it and puts it in his own direction. And the decision to make his Django an American slave definitely kind of plays on that. It gives that kind of subtext to the revenge in a way that even the original doesn't have necessarily. I love Django Unchained. I rewatched most of it before. I mean, it was like, we're not going to talk about it, don't bother watching it, but I sat down and watched 2/3 of it just because I watch it all the time, and I think it's a worthy successor, and I think that people who find the original through the Tarantino version, I think will be happy with it. I think it does play with some of the same ideas, just not in quite as sophisticated a way. But
yeah. All right, Paul, we'll start with you. Where can people find you on the interwebs?
Oh, you can go to Oil Paintings by P. Rameli on Facebook and paulrameli.com for Oil Paintings by me. You can find me on PA Brew News on Facebook and one word, PA Brew News, on YouTube for beer reviews, related stuff like that, and on YouTube, Funeral Dust 666 for metal-y stuff.
Yeah, and go to his painting website and buy his shit, because it's good. So.
Yes, and I'm broke, so that works out well.
Yeah. Daniel, where can people find you on the interwebs?
You can find me. I do a bunch of podcasts on various things, mostly science fiction related. Started as Doctor Who, but it's kind of moved on. You can find all that at oispaceman.com. That's oispaceman.com, all one word. And I write a weekly-ish column over at RootRoomPress.com. And I'm hoping to get a little bit of a discussion about Hateful Eight up for by the time this podcast goes out. So hopefully that will be up. If not, it'll be a couple of weeks down the line. But, it'll be up eventually.
Sweet. And, of course, you can visit us at tmbdos.podbean.com, where you can find all of our links to iTunes, YouTube, Facebook. Facebook is the best place to find us and interact with us. They must be destroyed on site on Facebook. Go there, join up. It's free. There's no dick bags on it. And you can just, interact with the community. It's a small one, but we're getting some good discussions going, and it's a good place to ask questions and get your questions answered, get your film requests answered. Next episode is going to be the sort of horror spaghetti western episode. So we're going to be going for Django Kill, If You Live Shoot, and 4 of the Apocalypse. So so we're going to have a little bit of Fulci as well in there doing spaghetti westerns. So that should be fun, and hopefully we'll have Paul back for that one as well, because I don't think he wants to miss that one.
Same bat time, same bat channel, hopefully.
Yeah. And until then, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you, Daniel and Paul, for joining up. It's nice to have the whole crew back together again. And we'll see you guys again. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Django, have you always been alone? Django, have you never loved again? Love will live on, life must go on, for you cannot spend your life regretting. Django, you must face another day. Django, now your love has gone away. Once you loved her, now you've lost her, but you've lost her forever, Django. When there are clouds in the skies and they are gray, you may be sad, but remember they'll all soon pass away. Oh, Django, after the showers, the sun will be shining. Lost you loved her, now you've lost her, but you've lost her forever, Django. When there are clouds in the skies and they are gray, you may be sad, but remember they'll all soon pass away. Oh, Django, after the showers, the sun will be shining. Django, oh, Django, you must go
Thank you for listening to They Must Be Destroyed on Sight. For past episodes, links to the host's other stuff, and links to various podcasts and websites of similar interest, please visit us at tmbdos.podbean.com. There you can also find our iTunes, YouTube, and Facebook links. Please join our Facebook group, as this is the best way to get in contact with us and to keep up to date with what's coming up on the podcast. We also can be found as part of the Oi Spaceman family of podcasts at oispaceman.com, where you can find various sci-fi themed podcasts about Doctor Who, Red Dwarf, Firefly, and classic sci-fi novels. If you decide to subscribe to us through iTunes, please take a moment to leave us a star rating and a review. Thank you. Drive through.